The economic relationship between Canada and the United States is one of the most significant in the world, characterized by deep trade ties that have developed over decades. However, recent developments have introduced a climate of uncertainty and tension, particularly as the threat of tariffs looms large. In British Columbia, BC, the provincial government is responding proactively to these challenges by establishing a war room aimed at countering potential trade barriers imposed by the U.S. The announcement of this initiative comes from Premier David Eby, in light of U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to impose tariffs on Canadian goods. As tensions escalate, BC's new housing minister, Ravi Kahlon, has made headlines with his strong rhetoric against the notion of British Columbia becoming the 51st state of the United States. His remarks reflect a broader sentiment among Canadian leaders who are determined to maintain their country's sovereignty and economic independence. Ravi Kahlon, a new voice in provincial politics. Ravi Kahlon, who has been appointed as the minister responsible for leading BC's response to potential tariffs, is no stranger to the complexities of political and economic challenges. As the provincial housing minister, he has already taken on significant responsibilities, particularly in a province grappling with housing affordability and availability issues. His appointment to this new role underscores the seriousness with which the BC government is approaching the threat of tariffs. Kahlon's recent comments, particularly his vehement dismissal of the idea of British Columbia becoming a U.S. state, highlight his strong commitment to Canadian sovereignty. By stating, "Excuse my language, but EFF that idea," Kahlon conveys the passionate resolve of many Canadians who view the potential for increased American influence as an unacceptable compromise of their national identity and autonomy. The formation of the war room. The establishment of a war room by the BC government illustrates a strategic approach to navigating the complexities of international trade relations. This initiative aims to coordinate efforts among various stakeholders, including businesses, government officials, and industry leaders, to mitigate the impacts of potential tariffs. By creating a centralized team focused on trade issues, BC is positioning itself to respond swiftly and effectively to any economic challenges that arise. Premier David Eby's announcement of the war room reflects a proactive stance in the face of uncertainty. The looming tariffs represent not only an economic threat, but also a challenge to the broader stability of trade relations between Canada and the U.S. The war room is intended to monitor developments, provide support to affected industries, and advocate for Canadian interests at all levels of government. The implications of tariffs on British Columbia. The potential imposition of tariffs by the U.S. would have significant repercussions for British Columbia, which relies heavily on trade with its southern neighbor. The province is home to a diverse economy that includes industries such as forestry, agriculture, technology, and tourism, all of which could be adversely affected by increased trade barriers. Tariffs could lead to higher prices for consumers, reduced market access for Canadian products, and potential job losses in key sectors. For instance, British Columbia's forestry industry, which exports a substantial portion of its products to the U.S., could face serious financial challenges if tariffs are enacted. These economic realities make the work of the war room all the more critical. Kahlon's perspective on statehood. Kahlon's adamant rejection of the idea of British Columbia becoming a U.S. state taps into a broader narrative of Canadian identity and nationalism. The notion of statehood is often associated with the loss of autonomy and cultural identity, which many Canadians are keen to preserve. By articulating strong opposition to this idea, Kahlon is reinforcing the importance of maintaining Canadian sovereignty in the face of external pressures. This sentiment resonates with a significant portion of the Canadian populace, who view their national identity as distinct and worthy of protection. The historical context of Canada's formation, as well as its ongoing struggles with issues of identity and governance, shapes the discourse around statehood and national integrity. Kahlon's remarks serve to galvanize support for Canadian unity and reinforce the idea that British Columbia, and Canada as a whole, should remain an independent nation. The broader context of Canada-US trade relations. The current trade tensions between Canada and the United States are not isolated incidents. They are part of a broader context that has evolved over time. Historically, the U.S. has exerted considerable influence over Canadian trade policies, leading to a complex and often contentious relationship. The introduction of tariffs is one of the ways in which the U.S. has sought to assert its economic dominance. The threat of tariffs is often accompanied by discussions about trade deficits, job losses, and national security concerns. For Trump, addressing these issues has been a central theme of his administration, particularly in the context of his America First policy. By framing tariffs as a necessary measure to protect American jobs and industries, the administration seeks to rally support from its base while exerting pressure on neighboring countries. The economic impact of tariffs on Canada. The potential economic impact of U.S. tariffs on Canada is profound. In addition to immediate financial repercussions, the introduction of tariffs could destabilize established trade relationships and disrupt supply chains. For businesses that have built their operations around free trade, the uncertainty introduced by tariffs can lead to significant challenges in planning, investment, and growth. The agricultural sector, for instance, could face severe consequences if tariffs are imposed on products such as dairy, meat, and grains. Similarly, the automotive industry, which relies on integrated supply chains across the Canada-US border, could experience delays and increased costs that ultimately affect consumers. To mitigate these risks, the BC government's War Room aims to provide support and resources to affected industries. This includes advocating for Canadian interests at the federal level, exploring alternative markets, and assisting businesses in navigating the complexities of trade policy. Diplomatic efforts and engagement. In addition to addressing economic concerns, the formation of the War Room highlights the importance of diplomatic engagement in the context of trade tensions. Canadian officials are actively seeking to engage with their U.S. counterparts to address concerns and promote cooperation. Through dialogue and negotiation, Canada aims to reinforce its position as a key partner in North American trade. The effectiveness of these diplomatic efforts will depend on the willingness of both sides to engage in constructive discussions. Canada has historically approached trade negotiations with a focus on collaboration and mutual benefit, seeking to find solutions that work for both countries. The current climate, however, presents challenges that require careful navigation and strategic thinking. The role of public opinion. Public opinion plays a crucial role in shaping trade policy and the response to potential tariffs. In Canada, there is a growing awareness of the impacts that U.S. tariffs could have on local economies and communities. As public sentiment shifts, Canadian politicians are taking note and adapting their messaging to resonate with constituents. Kahlon's strong language against the idea of statehood highlights the emotional and political weight of these issues. By articulating a clear stance on Canadian sovereignty, he is tapping into a broader sentiment of national pride and unity. These discussions are not merely abstract policy debates. They reflect the lived experiences and concerns of everyday Canadians. Navigating uncertainty in trade policy. As the threat of tariffs looms, businesses and policymakers alike must navigate an uncertain environment. The volatility of trade relations necessitates adaptability and strategic planning. Companies may need to reassess their supply chains, explore new markets, and develop contingency plans to mitigate the potential impacts of tariffs. The BC government's War Room is designed to provide a centralized resource for businesses seeking guidance and support in this challenging landscape. By fostering collaboration among industry stakeholders, government officials, and economic experts, the War Room aims to create a comprehensive response to the challenges posed by potential tariffs. The future of B.C.U.S. relations. The future of British Columbia's relationship with the United States will hinge on how both sides navigate the current trade tensions. The establishment of the War Room signals a commitment by the BC government to advocate for its interests while maintaining a focus on cooperation and dialogue. As economic interdependence remains a defining feature of Canada-US relations, the ability to find common ground will be essential. In the face of potential tariffs, the BC government must continue to engage with U.S. officials and industry leaders to reinforce the message that both countries benefit from strong trade ties. By emphasizing the importance of collaboration and mutual respect, Canada can work towards a resolution that preserves its economic interests and maintains its sovereignty. Conclusion. a call for unity and resilience. In conclusion, the establishment of a war room in British Columbia in response to the threat of U.S. tariffs reflects a proactive and strategic approach to navigating complex trade dynamics. Ravi Kahlon's passionate remarks against the idea of British Columbia becoming a U.S. state underscore the importance of Canadian sovereignty and national identity in the face of external pressures. As the BC government mobilizes resources to support affected industries and engage in diplomatic efforts, the need for unity and resilience becomes increasingly evident. The challenges posed by potential tariffs are not merely economic. They are deeply intertwined with questions of identity, governance, and the future of Canada-US relations. By prioritizing collaboration, strategic planning, and a commitment to Canadian values, British Columbia can work towards securing a stable and prosperous future in its relationship with the United States. The decisions made in the coming days and months will shape the trajectory of trade relations and the broader dynamics of North American cooperation. Ultimately, by standing firm in their commitment to sovereignty and economic independence, Canadians can navigate the complexities of the current landscape and emerge stronger together.